Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. And hello again, dear ones. Rev BRZ with you over here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is New Thought Today. Comes to you every Tuesday at 2 o'clock on the New Thought Media Network. And I am so grateful. It's another beautiful day here in Colorado. Z, how are things on your side of town?
Yes, we had some liquid sunshine, as we call it in Florida, the last 2 days. And now that liquid sunshine is gone, we're getting a little real sunshine. So I'm feeling real good about it.
Yeah, I had some of that liquid sunshine coming through the window in our basement the other night around 3 a.m. So it was a dark liquid sunshine on our side of town.
Yes.
Thanks for being with us. Hey, folks, thanks for being here. You know how it is. Sometimes technology works the way it's supposed to, and sometimes it doesn't. Today, it's not necessarily doing what we intend. So if you've got a minute, please hit the share button and send this out to your friends. Let them know what we're up to, because we're here to have a really important conversation today, and we've got a really great special guest to do it with. Now, those that have been following the program, and whether you're watching live or whether you're catching this on a replay at some time, those that have been following the program know that we look at how to bring the New Thought philosophy and the principles to life, how to really activate those in the world. And we're looking to highlight and have conversations with the people who are leading ministries, organizations, initiatives, ideas, companies, whatever it may be. We're here to have conversation with leaders that are moving the needle when it comes to bringing new thought into the world. And today, we have one of those people with you. I want to introduce you to a friend of ours. Reverend Celeste Frazier has been the spiritual leader of 3 Centers for Spiritual Living. She is an inspirational speaker, has spoken across the country at New Thought Centers and regional and international conferences. Celeste is a stimulating podcaster of the Mystic Magic podcast. You can find that on most of your podcast venues. Just do a search on your favorite podcast platform. She is a warm counselor who sees the beauty in you and is a visioning facilitator, passionate teacher, healer who seeks to reveal your life. Celeste has directed outreach ministries as a performer and a producer, screenwriter. Her books are available on Amazon and Kindle. And most importantly, and here's how you make sure you stay in touch with Reverend Celeste, because I know I won't remember all of that off the top of my head. But just head on over to her website, celestefrazier.com, for more. Reverend Celeste, welcome to New Thought Today.
Thank you. It's a joy to be with you guys.
It is a joy to have you with us here as well. So now, part of the reason we wanted to have you on the program, I know that you are part of a team that's leading an initiative to bring forth a program this coming year. We're actually only 6 weeks out. It's the Juneteenth, Honoring Freedom, the Juneteenth Symposium. It's going to be in June on Friday the 18th and Saturday the 19th of June. We'll talk more about registration and all that kind of stuff at the end of the episode. But tell us a little more, please, of what we need to know here.
Well, there's a few things. I am one of the co-chairs of the program team of a bigger conference, which is called Celebrating Our Soul, a New Thought conference by people of African descent. And that's next year in August 11 to 14, 22, and that'll take place at Unity Village. So all of the New Thought organizations are participating in that: Unity, CSL, UFBL, independent centers like Agape, Hillside. So there's a lot of people coming from different places around the country and beyond. And so we're we're looking at SCSL as one of the contributing organizations to that conference. And so, Tracy and I were talking about doing a fundraiser, and we settled on doing an event. And I chose Juneteenth because I thought it was the perfect time for us to celebrate freedom, be in principle, and have an event where a lot of people that look like me are ready to celebrate. Yeah.
Amen. Well, and that's an interesting perspective, because I think in the New Thought arena, if you will, people of color, ministers of color, practitioners of color, or just adherents to the New Thought perspective from that Black and brown people is hardly noticed, I think, in a lot of places. They don't know our place in it, where we've come from, what the ministers were, or what they've accomplished. And so I think it's a great opportunity to educate our own, but educate the broader community as well, that New Thought has been around in our community for a very long time.
Well, yeah, because we have our sponsorship campaign going on right now. And one of the sponsorship opportunities, actually all 4 of the sponsorship offerings, are named after an African-American person in New Thought. Dr. Pearl C. Wood, J. Arthur Twine, Sarah Flowers, and most recent ancestor being Daniel L. Morgan. And so this goes back to, Dr. Pearl C. Wood was only the 3rd center that was chartered in the whole religious science movement. So, we go back as far as New Thought goes, so we may have been in the background, but that doesn't mean we weren't there.
Right.
And it's an important opportunity for us to share this history, because a lot of people just kind of get stuck on Ernest Holmes, or, somebody who's on television today, and not really thinking about the people who really laid the groundwork and who created generations of truth in different communities.
Yeah.
There are a lot out there that people haven't known about. Some have come and gone, but we've been here all along.
Right. And some of the people they met, Della Reese was minister in the New Thought movement.
Right.
And so was that some people try to debate it, but Reverend Ike also, Daddy Grace.
Yes.
So the tradition of having a lifestyle, if you will, of progressive thinking, New Thought thinking from a more spiritual perspective, has always been in our communities, whether it's been a more traditional Christian organization or a full-blown New Thought organization. So
yeah, we really didn't have a choice with that. No, I mean, church was where we thought it was safe to get together. That was before they started bombing churches.
Yes.
But that was where we organized. That was where we strategized. That was where we came together to share information, and, if you go way back, if you go back into the times of Harriet Tubman, or it was, the minister who was helping people get through sometimes, or it was, it was always a common place where we gathered, because we never lost our faith. That's the only reason that we survived.
Yes.
So it's intrinsic. Our faith has always been intrinsically attached to our lives. And so it was our salvation, literally.
Yeah. And it's interesting, just looking at the whole spiritual and religious perspective. I have a book by a gentleman named Ibn Bilal, who was in North Carolina. He was a slave, and he was a Hafiz Quran, who knew the Quran by heart. And he rewrote, as a slave, he rewrote the Quran by heart. And they have a copy of it that's still available. But it shows that spiritual aspect of our lives, even though we went through some of the most traumatic stuff that anyone could ever imagine, the idea that God is there, that God provides, and that as we continue to hold the high aspirations of that, we can make a way out of no way whenever that needs to be faced.
Yeah, I always have a little issue when people call people slaves. There are no slaves. Now, there were enslaved Africans, but that means you never had control of our minds, though.
Yeah, exactly.
There may be some 21st century enslaved people that, you know, their minds are a little bit enslaved, but I'm not going to talk about the representative of certain. Oops.
Yes. Yes. So looking at the Juneteenth symposium, when you first had this genesis of the idea, what was your vision?
Our vision was fundamentally about freedom. Freedom as a principle, freedom realized, how to get free, how to realize that freedom is not mysterious, but that it's our truth. Really being able to embody that in very tangible ways and very common day-to-day ways. And again, our faith is at the center of it. You know, you go from, you know, fear to freedom through faith, you know, the triple F's, you know, in order for us to get to a realization of who we are beyond a body or beyond a circumstance, but as spiritual beings. And so it is that kind of thing that had to be awake and alive in the peoples throughout time, even though, you know, the first people were so-called freed in April of 1862. It was the last people in Galveston, Texas, who got freed in June of 1865. So it took 3 years of this process for the word to travel, because there was so much effort in trying to deny that freedom. Right. So, you know, but principle will always out. So therefore, you know, we're still using freedom to free ourselves, not just Black people, but all of us.
All people. Yeah. And you know, it's so funny that you bring that up about the timing of it, because I'm originally from Florida. And when I heard people raving about Juneteenth and you know, it was the emancipation when they got word and everything, and I'm looking puzzled, because I'm saying, no, that's not true. Because in Florida, my family has been practicing May 20th as that emancipation, if you will, for 100 years at least. And it's still going on today. So when I heard that, I was like, ooh, I didn't know what it meant. But as you said, as I looked further and the information came out, it was a long trail of word going by word of mouth, because there were certain parties who didn't want that information to get out.
Right. Like on April 16th, 1862 is when President Lincoln freed everybody in the DC area. And they were celebrating that till about 1890. And then there was like this almost 30-year gap. And then they started celebrating it again in the, you know, in the teens of the 1900s. But, you know, that was the first out of everything else. And so, I always like to do a little research about the area. I was speaking for Baltimore Center, and it was around that time. And so I found that out just a few weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's a lot of traveling that has to occur in consciousness. And it's not about the geography. And so what we do know is that we all have travels to go in our awakening to our own individual and definitely our collective freedom. It's, you know, it's none of us are free if all of us are not free. So this is a constant thought, principle, initiative, whatever you want to call it. It's a goal, and it's ours because we own it. But we have to realize it.
Well, that's so true. I mean, and you know, one in my mind, one of the key aspects of New Thought, and you know, my journey into New Thought was through a couple of steps. the idea of a collective freedom, so that everyone has the opportunity to actualize at the highest level with the minimal amount of distractions or impediments or whatever people put in their way or whatever we put in our own way, trying to navigate the current system, is that utopia, that heaven on earth as I see it, where we begin to respect each other for who and what they are and what they bring to the table, no matter what they look like, no matter what the gender. We always said in Florida, you got kumquats, you got grapefruits, you got oranges, you got satsumas. Oh, you even got navel oranges and tangelos. None of those get mad at each other. They're all citrus fruit. The kumquat doesn't get mad at the lime or the lemon and when we as a people can understand that we are a humanity and there are different flavors of humanity that are used for different things. And when we can open up to that idea as a human family, we're going to be able to make some real serious leaps and bounds in terms of one of the things we look for on this program is how do we take this philosophy and actualize it in the community, in our lives, and in people who need help's lives.
Well, 2 points I want to make. And one is that from a very young child, I'm amazed sometimes when I think about it. I was always wondering, how can freedom and equality coexist? Because, in order for us to be free, will somebody else's life have to be compromised so that we can be equal? And so that's a running dialogue that I've had, since I was a kid. Don't ask me why, but I'm just calling it consciousness. And then the other thing is, for me, that's what ministry has always been about, even before I was a minister. In fact, there were two reasons why when I got the hit as a kid to become a minister, I was like, nope. The first one was Jesus on the cross. And the second one was Martin Luther King's assassination. And I thought, wow, here they were both, disciples for freedom. And, they got persecuted for wanting to awaken people to their freedom and to, equality. And so my ministry has always been multidimensional. When I sat down for my panel back in 2006, I said, my ministry is 6 prongs. It's pulpit, it's peace, it's publishing, it's production, it's performing, and it's writing. And for me, my ministry has been a blend of both focus ministry and pulpit ministry. Mm-hmm. But most of the time when I was doing pulpit, I was always doing some kind of outreach. I started at Agape. I was going to convalescent homes, prisons, children's hospitals, taking other performers and bringing, scripture and seeing miraculous things happening with older people and the genius of the younger people. When I was doing work then, I was working with the common unity, and we were always doing some kind of an outreach, and that was where I became a practitioner. And so for me, it meant going into the prisons. It meant, having a whole dialogue around the Afghanistan war, being at the peace vigils. I was, that was what I did then. And even before I came into New Thought, when I was in traditional religion, I would be out there, handing out food to people who needed food. I was out there, in the demonstrations and in the protests. So for me, ministry has never been static, right. and this, this thing about New Thought used to be about forward-thinking people, Ralph Waldo Emerson and those people, and Norman Vincent Peale. Those people were not, people who were just sitting around. They were actually doing stuff. They were effecting change, right? And so I don't know at what point people got a little stagnant but it happened in this movement where people thought it was sufficient to just sit there and read and to talk about what somebody else wrote and stopped having new thoughts. So that's never been a part of my track. So for me, this is all part of, being God in action. I mean, if you look at our principles, it'll tell you right there that, we want to make sure people have food and homes and a sense of belonging in a world of peace and harmony. And we want to, take our personal responsibility with our social conscience. If we talk about a global vision, that can't happen in just one person. That has to be an outreach kind of an activity. Yeah, right. And so, I've never had a question about that, even in doing voter registration. It doesn't mean that you're having to choose a party. It just means get everybody registered, right. And for those people who right now want to suppress people being able to vote, that's not what this country is built on. That's not the democratic way. And so we still stand for freedom in a number of different ways as we seek to make sure that everybody has access, and also to make sure that everybody's voice gets heard. And that's a slippery slope, because, some people think it's still cool for them to get guns any kind of way that they want to. And I'm just trying to understand how that fits with freedom, because I'm not seeing it, because unless you're teaching people how to use guns responsibly, it's not freeing for any of us. No. So there's a lot. There's a lot of work that I do beyond the pulpit, and I am just as passionate about teaching the principles, but I'm never passionate about just using words, but putting them into action.
Right. We've talked about that here a ton on this program. And folks, if you're just catching in and just tuning in with us here today, this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. Reverend LZ and I are here every Tuesday, and this week we're joined by a special guest, Reverend Celeste Frazier. And this is a fabulous, fabulous conversation, because I'm hearing these parallels and these intersections, and there's so many places we could take this kind of conversation today, because we are seeing some pretty much immediate, direct parallels happening in our life today. People unwilling to see the truth and willing to follow a blatant lie to just be it, to make the status quo. What we're talking about here, and what I'm starting to hear emerge, is that excitement for where New Thought can take us moving forward. Yes, I agree. We were stagnant. And yes, there was a lot of that belief that all we got to do is do the work in consciousness and the world will change around us. Right? How many religious scientists does it take to screw in a light bulb? Only one, because I just got to stand there and hold it and the world will revolve around me. Right, the world revolves around that this one idea of earnest, or this one word, or this one book, or this one paragraph. Where the call is to say, okay, no, yeah, we got that, right? Practice is practice, and practice is good, but practice isn't the game, right?
And somebody said, "Treat and move your feet." That's what I heard.
Yeah, exactly.
Which worked for me.
And when you look at the tradition of the Black church, right, or spirituality in the Black community, it was always, by definition and necessity, a both and proposition. It was to teach the teachings, but to also walk that talk and go out and help people in the community. And so if we move forward and look at that as it gets coalesced in a more formal way, we look at at the whole idea of Black liberation theology by James Cohen, who I was blessed to have the opportunity to meet and sit with for a couple of times when I was in New York. When you look at this whole idea of how do you take a spiritual teaching or a spiritual practice so that it enlivens and do exactly what you said earlier, Reverend Celeste, which is, how do we begin to get on this seesaw, if you will, of justice and equality, because it's a moving thing. And so we have to figure out, how do we find the sweet spot, if you will, to allow minimal amount of give and take, so that, because we know it's changing, we're going to have to change. As we see now, the past year, everything has changed. And so when we look at justice and equality, if you will, before the pandemic and after the pandemic, it's a whole new ball game.
Well, we certainly hope so. And, I'm not really one for figuring stuff out. I'm more like getting a hit from spirit and moving with that, and trusting that that's the way out of whatever this quagmire or entanglement is.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I did vigils the day before the jury went to Derek Chauvin, and the Sunday after the verdict. And and including everybody who had been killed in the last 2 weeks, because we certainly couldn't go back centuries and decades, but definitely with people who were fresh in our minds, and really do some healing work. We've gotten so far away from what this teaching is about. This is a spiritual healing teaching. And we did spiritual healing. And I can tell you that there were marked differences energetically from the time we started the vigil to the time we ended in both days, and particularly on the second one. But we knew that people were in pain, because I knew how traumatizing it was for me to sit up and watch that trial while they attempted to villainize the victim. Mm-hmm. And so all of this angst that people were struggling with, somebody needs to be there to support them. That's what ministers are for, to minister, to aid, to help people get back to their spiritual center, find the comfort. Just like the enslaved Africans couldn't help but help each other when they were beaten down or injured, to be restored back to their health, because if they weren't able to work, they would get another beat down or killing or whatever it is. It's human nature. We are innately compassionate beings. And so whatever else is happening is some fear that has gone runaway crazy, and it needs to be put in check.
Yeah. Yeah. And you remind me of that statement purported by Ernest that says, we are healing and teaching order, if you will.
Yes.
And so, I look at that as saying, we're teaching you how to heal, not only yourself, but others. And so to do that, you got to treat and move your feet. And so,
yes.
There are numerous stories about Ernest and several practitioners who would go into prayer, and the whole idea that they would not stop praying until they felt some movement in the energy and that something happened.
Yes.
It wasn't this, I'm going to say, of treatment and okay, I did that and I'm gone. But if there's no feeling that the energy has shifted, or there's no physical manifestation of that, we need to do some more praying. We got some more healing to do.
Because the demonstration happens in the mind of the practitioner, because if you're not shifting from seeing somebody as sick to somebody who's whole, then you need to go sit down somewhere and forget about calling yourself a healer. Yeah. Because if you can't do it in consciousness, nothing can follow in the physical.
Right.
And yet, some of us just stop at the mental and think that this is about mentalism. But, we come from an ancient teaching that goes beyond this country and that goes beyond many countries. We're going way back to antiquity in terms of these eternal principles. It's ancient wisdom, new thought. Yeah. And sometimes people forget about the ancient wisdom and, those that are eternal that we see happening throughout the ages, that we can trust because they've been proven time and time again throughout the years. But if you want to toss away the old just because it happened a long time ago and don't see the permanency of these truths, then you're not going to be anchored in truth. You're going to be kind of floundering around and talking about trying to get free. Right. So I know that this is deeper than whatever might happen in a service or even in a contemporary book, unless it's based on ancient wisdom.
Well, that's the key. I mean, Robert and I say this all the time, that, when we look at ancient civilizations, no matter where it is, I mean, we got a whole lot of stuff about who, what, when, where, and why. Let's drop that for now. But when we look at ancient wisdom and we look at the foundational principles that they were built on and the monuments they built based on that knowledge, they are still standing. And we are still trying to figure out now, with all our technology and all our whatevers, how it happened and to duplicate. I remember they sent the whole A-team of architects over to Africa to try to create a pyramid. Couldn't do it. Couldn't get nowhere close to it. And so when we look at that, not as a bragging point, but just as a matter of fact, there was a knowledge, there was an understanding, there was a consciousness connection that was present and active, not just something that we thought about. It was put into motion.
Yes.
That we need to get back to right now.
Yeah. Well, we've been using some of the same templates, but they forget that those were original thoughts, and that, because they worked and they still exist in existence today, then we know that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, literally, right?
Right.
But so much of the principles have not been sustained, maintained, or promoted. Polarity and all of these things that we get caught up in and try to explain away and don't even realize that this is just naturally part of life. Some real spiritual eternal laws that just don't die.
Right. And that's my cornerstone. One of the first things that propelled me into a new thought anything was the Kabbalion, which is the Sacred Book of Thoth, or Hermes, or Tahuti, depending on where you want to go with it. That talks about, you made me think about it when you said polarity and vibration and all is mental and all of these 7 principles, only 7 principles. And if you start mixing and matching, the permutation goes pretty big in terms of how these laws work. And so when we can get back to these fundamental principles of how the universe works, and as Ernest said in the first stanza in the Science of Mind textbooks, I look forward to the day when religion and science, or spirituality and science, depends on who's talking, walk hand in hand.
And they always have, though.
Always have. We need to get back to that point.
Right.
Yeah. And I was referencing the Kabbalion, by the way. But what I wanted to say is that we have all of these truths already, and unless we go back to basics, we always talk about going back to basics at the beginning of the year, but the basics go even further than that, right? Because we have to understand, that the gods that we're even dealing with now, we've adapted and taken from conquerors. We can go back to the Hebrews, we can go back further than that, but even the word Gott is a German word, God, and all of these feminine gods that are never talked about, which is why women have been oppressed and suppressed for so long, because they didn't want us to talk about the female gods, right? And so when we uncover our ancient truths, then we can stand rightly in our power. And that's all of us, not just some of us. Right. And that's another freedom conversation. And that's another reason why we're honoring freedom in our event.
Yeah. No, and that's powerful. That's powerful.
Incredibly powerful. And I love where we're going with this, because again, it comes down to, if any one of us is not free, then none of us are free.
Right.
And for every one of us that is not now free, our work is to do the work in consciousness and in form to bring forth that freedom, to promote that freedom, to model that freedom, to demonstrate that freedom. For some to stand on the rooftops and scream and shout for that freedom.
Yeah.
For others to march quietly for that freedom, for others. And and you're finding a great way to bring that forward for us.
Yeah, because we have to move beyond who's going to conquer who, who's going to be on top, because it's never really served us ever. I
True.
mean, we've been influenced by different cultures, and even the United States is not really a successful melting pot. So because we've been so isolated from each other because we were afraid that somebody else would get, the upper hand, right? And so here we get to look at, a real truth about nature's forces, and really be with that. And we get to really dance with that. Our event that's coming up, we've got talks, we've got spiritual practices, we've got workshop, we've got an artist, we've got all kinds of expressions of freedom, and audience engagement as well, because everybody's voice needs to be heard. And to the extent that we can accommodate that, we'll do that, but we'll at least need to have everybody represented.
Yeah, and that's key, because I think we've now stepped into this arena where they being the broader community are starting to bring more representatives to the table. And
Yes.
the more we do that, whether it's in a small group or a larger group, we get more eyes, different perspectives, different geniuses, if you will, on a specific point or several points that open up a whole new vista that previously was not even known to exist, let's say. And so
Yeah.
that is the benefit of freedom for all, because imagine those people, whoever they may be, that have been suppressed or shunned or beat to submission, however you want to categorize someone giving up their fire. If that fire could be reignited and allow them to give a perspective that no one else has. I mean, a prime example of that, if we look at some of the artistic community and some of the genius that they display, but when we look at how often they're treated or discounted or not respected, we're missing. Google. There's a
We're missing that
program on
brilliance.
CBS recently where there's this autistic kid who's doing something with space and finding stars. He's got patents that NASA has bought, but people would look at him and just write him off.
Right.
We can't do
And
that anymore.
I'm just so grateful for the Biden-Harris administration, because the vision of seeing that, frankly, everybody who's a leader doesn't have to look like an older white man, and to have more women in place, to have more diversity culturally, and not be punished as they've tried to do some of the recent congresswomen who've come in the last few years.
Yeah.
And to try to promote some of that good old boy, craziness. The Congress has never been, so pristine. There were days when they used to cane each other in Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some thug stuff, and you're supposed to be representing, right, us. Well, I think we can do better, and I hope that we continue to strive to do so.
Yeah.
I saw a political cartoon today, and it was a group of Republican type leaders laughing at Mitt Romney for being a short noser, because they all had nice long Pinocchio style noses, and he didn't. And it was like, you're the outcast. And here's the point I see in that: you're the outcast when you tell the truth.
Yeah.
You're ostracized when you tell the truth. And unfortunately, that seems, and we've had this discussion before, we appear to be living in a post-truth world. It's sometimes very, very difficult to tell, other than those I find that are really spiritually attuned. It's tough to know what's the truth and what's the not the truth.
Well, I'm not going to agree that we're living in a post-truth world, because that's just not acceptable to me. But I will say that truth has been suppressed for so long, and so many people are awakening. I mean, so many of my white friends, and I don't use that word casually, are awakening to things that they were disappointed that they weren't taught in school. You know,
Right.
a lot of us have been fed lies for centuries. We always knew what was going on, what the real deal was in the Black community, because we were maintaining our own history. But, you know, for so many that it was done for their benefit, they were kept in the dark, particularly white women were kept in the dark. And even though they were benefiting from it, they didn't even have the respect of their men to tell them what was really going on.
Right.
You know, and so for, you know, for Michelle Obama to be the kind of woman who recognizes, you know, who built that house that she lives in, and how, although there's progress, that there's still work to do. That kind of awakening keeps us active and not stagnant. It keeps us awake and alive and on purpose, so that we can restore our humanity to our true spiritual integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So we want to celebrate freedom through honoring freedom. That's June 18th and 19th, Friday evening, 7 p.m. Central to 10 p.m. Central, and starting again on Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central to approximately 4 p.m. Central on that Saturday. And we've even got an elder panel. We've got some octogenarians and some of our older.
That's not you, is it, Z?
No.
Wait, no, not yet. Okay.
You know, that are bringing us some wisdom and,
Yeah.
you know, and some history. So it's going to be a really rich event.
Yeah. And you know, I'm excited about it, because one of the things I've been doing for the last 25, almost 30 years is doing some genealogy research on my family, and going back and trying to sort that out. And it's been tough, given how our families, Black families that is, were so disjointed and broke up and all of that. But I've been blessed to really do some good work. And on one side, you know, I can go all the way back to 1600s. The other side, I can go back into the early 1800s, 1818, 1823. And the stuff that comes out of that from a spiritual perspective, to look at how two people coexist together and are actually family, but treat each other in various different ways, but call themselves spiritual at the same time. It's just, it's an amazing journey that I would encourage everybody to try to go down that path for themselves, no matter where they can get. It's very enlightening.
Well, fear can appear to be power, you know, and what people do out of fear will tell you how in touch they are with their true spiritual power. Because when you're constantly reacting to your own persecution or oppression, and you take that out on somebody, that doesn't free you up. That just simply keeps you in prison and brings more trauma into our families. And we have so much generational trauma in the Black race, that we have come to expect it as a way of life.
Yeah.
And so I don't mean all of us, but I mean a lot of what we see and a lot of our health issues today is based on intergenerational trauma. And, you know, the statistics are there that, you know, the comparisons in terms of heart disease, that's all about feeling hurt. You know, the blood pressure, you know, blood is about joy. You know, when you get suppressed generationally, it's got to have an effect on the body because it's energy. Right. And so we get to reclaim our freedom. We get to reclaim our power, not necessarily by might, but, you know, by right of consciousness and through the work that we do to support each other.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is through the act of consciousness, through the right of consciousness, and through the activity of living, demonstrating, embracing, promoting, inspiring that consciousness. And that to me that feels like there's an intuitive hit that's a vital component of what you're creating on Juneteenth. So again, folks, it's honoring freedom. Friday night, June 18th, and Saturday, June 19th, coming up in about 6 weeks. We're going to have registration for information for you coming in the next few weeks, and we'll make sure that we put that in our newsletters and on our websites and our pages and all of those kinds of things, and everything else. So I want to say this has been, I find myself often wanting to say, I know that I don't know and I know enough to just sit back and listen in a lot of these, in the conversations such as this one. And today's one of those days for me. So I want to thank both of you for not only giving me that ability to sit back and listen and learn, because I feel like I am learning. And Rev Celeste, I'm grateful you're here. I'm really, really looking forward to this event and experience. And I promise I'll be first in line when well, I might not be first in line when it opens, but when it does, May 18th, I believe the registration is going to open.
Right.
I will make sure that I'm going to be there because I'm looking forward to it. And I know Z is looking forward to it as well. So I can speak in that regard.
Yes, he's one of the presenters, as am I. And yes, this is a fundraiser again for our bigger conference that's taking place in Kansas City. And we're excited about that event too. We've actually got UNESCO as one of our partners there, as Kansas City is the city of music. And so we're getting to pull from the United Nations component as well as the local talent and our talent from around the country. So this is to support that event, and this has never been done before. Neither one of these events have ever been done before. We've certainly never had a particular event in the Centers for Spiritual Living to celebrate the freedom of Black people in particular. And we certainly never had a New Thought conference that was produced by Black people of African descent. So these are both once in a lifetime events that I'm very honored to be a part of.
Wonderful.
No doubt. And I think I'll do my best to get the word out to make sure, because this will set a precedent. We're talking about, we talked about that ancient wisdom thing and setting some foundational stones. This will be a foundational stone that will allow us to get this teaching and this philosophy and way of life into our communities at a broader and deeper level. Not that it isn't there, because we know that it has been and that it still is. But, as most New Thoughters and specifically religious scientists will say, this is the teaching that is needed now more than ever.
Yes.
But if we cannot distribute it, if you will, if we are not able to get it out to everybody, the opportunity for everybody to gain freedom will begin to diminish. There go, everybody will still be in bondage.
And that very thought is the genesis of what created the Celebrating Our Soul event that we're producing in 2022. So you tapped right into that.
Amen.
2022. Hey, see, Kansas City's only a hop, skip, and a jump. By then, you and I might actually be able to get in a car together for 4 or 5 hours to take a road trip.
Yeah, no doubt, because I'm looking to do something there as well. That's a workshop there, and I'm definitely will be there in person and ready to go.
Yeah, we got you on the schedule.
So because I come from a family of ministers. I was when I was an Islamic imam early in my days, back in my early 20s. It was all about being out in the community and communal living. There's something to be said about that energy, as Reverend Celeste said earlier, that once it coalesces, it takes a life of its own.
It's interesting that the Black Panthers finally got recognized through the Oscars this year.
Yeah.
And all they were trying to do is take care of the children.
Yeah.
And they were painted as some kind of villains, and they were, getting kids fed and taking care of education and helping each other, building a community that, needed rebuilding from, all of the devastation and oppression. And so there's so much that is coming to light, and we cannot be continuously villainized when there's so much magnificence in this people.
And you just bring to mind that whole breakfast program was taken over by the federal government as the Head Start program and the breakfast program, that they took the exact idea from the Panthers, who were doing the Head Start breakfast program, feed the kids before they go to school, give them a little motivation to get in and be better. Federal government took it and wrapped it and called it theirs, but it was actually the Panthers.
Right, so they could profit from it, right?
Of course.
Right. All right. There's a whole nother show, folks. So we're just gonna say, otherwise, because it is just before the top of the hour, and if we don't, we'll be here until well after the hour. And we don't want to do that because we've got the Vibrant Living Hour with our dear friend Ken Ludwig coming up next here on the New Thought Media Network. So, Reverend Celeste, again, thank you so much for being with us here today. We want to say thank you to everyone out there in Cyberland watching with us as well. If you're part of our committed and donating program, and that is happening with you on a monthly basis, thank you. If you'd like to learn more about how you can financially support this ministry and the work we're doing to ensure we get these broadcasts out into the world, go ahead and click the donate button. It's there in the description of your video somewhere. And please keep on joining us. Keep coming back. We're going to continue to have these types of conversations. Rev Celeste, I hope you'll come back and visit with us again and again.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Cool. All right. Before we go, final thoughts.
I'll go first so Reverend Celeste can have the final word. I would just say, freedom is a coveted idea that we all need to buy into. And as Reverend Celeste said so much, if one of us are in bondage, we're all in bondage. So we need to move beyond that to total freedom.
And I'll just say that the truth is that we are free, and that we can let go of the fear that blinds us into believing that we're not.
Yes.
Amen.
Nothing more to be said. Thank you for being with us, folks. We'll be back next week. Until then, peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.